and what you're looking at and the track you see this storm moving right now?
Yeah, exactly. So if you're watching here from Falmouth, see that yellowish, peachish area just south of Falmouth? That is going to be your high velocities aloft. I'm going to put mile per hour on this, and what you're looking for here, see that velocity of 71 miles an hour? That's only a couple of thousand feet off the water there. So it's easy for these storms to push that velocity down toward the ground, and that's why I'm concerned also about some strong wind damage, even if it doesn't produce a waterspout or a tornado. Also contrast that with some winds, moving in the other direction about 30 miles an hour. At times, what you're going to look for is some very light green showing up very close to this peach area, this colored area. And when you see that getting very close together, that means the rotation is tightening, and it increases the chance that there's a waterspout or a tornado. When they start to get a little more separated, even if there's still very strong winds aloft, it tends to mean it's more of a divergent signature, and that indicates some strong winds aloft. What's very tricky in these type of setups, though, is that you get these divergent signatures where it's a little more separated, but it quickly ramps up, and you'll see these little kinks in the color bar here, and you'll quickly ramp up and get the rotation that can produce the waterspout, if not a brief tornado. So that is the concern with this. We're in a very tropical soupy air mass near the Cape, points south with the southerly wind. The dew points are near 70 degrees. It's kind of prime when you have a lot of rotation at the low levels of the atmosphere for any thunderstorm to get going and produce a waterspout. And the concern is when these waterspouts get closer to land with the rotating thunderstorms, that they could eventually mean producing a tornado. So thus the tornado warning until 11:45 for this cell. Now right now the strongest part of that cell does appear to be just to the south of Falmouth and right on the northern side, northern edges of the vineyard. So regardless whether you're under the most intense part of the winds and the rotation here and the possible waterspout or the possible tornado very close to the north coast of the vineyard, it is still producing gusty winds, even in the Falmouth area. This is still producing a lot of wind coming out of the thunderstorm and also producing a lot of rain. So we're going to continue to see the torrential downpours, and that's why we're saying, don't go out and try to see what's going on. Likely, if there is anything out there, whether a waterspout or not, out on these waters just on the north coast of the vineyard, it's probably hard to see, probably rain-wrapped at the moment as we continue to track this tornado warning. Just want to get back to that warning, show you where it is again. You can see the outline of it. It's the red outline. We did have an overlay of a severe thunderstorm warning and a tornado warning, but this tornado warning is that red outline, and this does include Mashpee back into the Falmouth area as well as the northern side of Martha's Vineyard at the moment. So we continue to watch that area. More specifically, it's this area that's now moving off to the east-northeast pretty quick, right on the northern side of the vineyard. I will say this, the rotation looks a little more separated on this last frame. It looks a little more of a downburst type situation, straight line winds at the last frame here. So kind of goes back to what I was talking about earlier, where you get these rev ups and downs in rotation, where you'll get a burst of strong rotation, it kind of comes back a little bit, and then burst again. So you have to continue to monitor these thunderstorms, and you'll continue to see that the warning is continuing as you have that potential rotation producing likely a potential waterspout over the waters at the moment.
Chris, let me interrupt really fast. You're talking about, some pretty gusty winds, downpours. What can residents in those areas kind of expect to see in terms of damage that they might come across after this passes?
If it's just the severe thunderstorm warning, even a severe thunderstorm is capable of producing damage. We saw that yesterday, last night across the Cape, even gusts 50 to 55 miles an hour with the trees fully out with the leaves. It almost acts like sails. So you get these wind gusts of 50 or 55 miles an hour, and you can easily, break a tree or uproot a tree. So that's why the severe thunderstorm warnings are also important to take heed of. Now, the severe thunderstorm warning was just dropped because it's essentially replaced by a tornado warning over the next 15 minutes. So even if you're not in that core of the rotation that we were showing you, you can still get a gust 40, 50 miles an hour, 55 miles an hour to produce tree damage. Now, outside that area of rotation, outside that warning, you're getting a tremendous amount of rain in a short amount of time. Areas of Falmouth up to San Sandwich, now over to Barnstable as this storm continues its east to northeasterly journey. There's some of the stronger winds aloft now just south of Falmouth here and just to the northeastern side of the vineyard, and it continues to move off to the northeast. So this is important to track. You know, you get back through the Elizabeth Islands, you know, that rotation is now beyond you. It's more focused on the south side of Falmouth, essentially between Falmouth and the vineyard here. So any folks that are watching from the northeast corner of Martha's Vineyard as well as the south side of Falmouth need to take your safety measures and get inside and make sure that you're away from the doors and windows and at the lowest level. So we're going to be tracking that south side of Falmouth, south side of Mashpee.
While you're mentioning safety, and we're going to let you regroup for a moment and go over some of the newest data that you have there, Chris, that's very important because if you're in this area, he's mentioning Falmouth and North Falmouth, Mashpee, those areas right now of the biggest concern with this rotation spinning really close by. There are some important tips you need to be aware of right now if you're in these affected areas. One, you, as Chris has been mentioning, want to stay indoors. You don't want to venture out. You don't want to see what's happening outside. When we're telling you to be of concern that there could be a tornado forming, you first and foremost want to stay indoors, and you want to find some of the lowest point rooms in your home.
Exactly. Like basements are best, of course, if you have one. Try to get to the basement if you can. Also try to go to the center of your house or whatever building that you're in. So stay away from those windows. Glass, of course, can break with these gusty winds.
And you're tempted to look outside. You want to see what's happening.
Outside. Don't try to film, you know, for Instagram or social media. It's more important to have your safety
Our concern is your safety.
Yeah.
That's why we're on air right now, because we want to make sure that if you're in this affected area, you're taking the precautions that you need to take. You don't want to get out into your car and drive around or try to outrun these storms or drive away from these storms, because as Chris is showing you on this map, they're moving. It's moving in the east-northeast direction. So the best thing is to get into the most interior center part of your home. If it's a closet, somewhere without windows, and Chris, you may have a few things you can add as well. You've been doing this a long time.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's perfect. Don't go out and try to see this thing and, you know, at lowest level of the building you're in, and you get away from the doors and the windows. I want to see this. If you watch some of that polygon that just got dropped, that's why I stepped in front of the screen here again. The tornado warning continues here for portions of the eastern side of Falmouth down toward Mashpee, but it has now been dropped for the Elizabeth Islands as well as the vineyard, because that rotation now is just to the northeast of the vineyard at the moment. Doesn't mean you go run outside. You know, there's still a lot of heavy rain and some thunder and lightning, but the rotation now is just to the north of the vineyard. So we're continuing to watch this very closely here over the Falmouth and Mashpee area, and eventually continuing to slide eastbound. You know, the hope would be if you can keep the concentration of the rotation just offshore, but it has been very close to the coastline, both on the northern side of the vineyard and over to the south side of Falmouth and over to Mashpee, and that's why the tornado warning's still in effect. And notice how expansive some of the strong winds are coming out of this storm here. You do still see some strong winds aloft, indicated by the light reds showing up in Falmouth and Mashpee. So even if you don't get into a tornado situation, you know, a strong wind aloft can translate to a 40, 50, 55 mile per hour gust down near the surface, and that can certainly do some damage, tree damage down there. So we continue to track this. Tornado warning still in effect for the Falmouth area, essentially very close to that Route 28 stretch that comes on the south side of the town and back down toward the coastline as the cell continues its journey off to the east. Now, the strongest rotation has been just offshore here, but every once in a while you can get these little hooks and little snags and kinks in the radar, and that indicates some more rotation trying to develop. So in this tropical-like soupy air mass, we do have to keep a close eye on these setups to see where the most enhanced rotation is, and that's why the tornado warning was in effect across that area. So we'll continue to monitor this. There is your tornado warning, still up for the Falmouth area over toward the Mashpee. This extends until 11:45. Still after that, we're going to have to keep an eye on what's going on here down through the rest of the Mid-Cape and Lower Cape, too, because we are tracking some torrential downpours coming out of these storms. So even if you're north of the tornado-warned area, I mean, these are blinding rains right now across Route 6, heading back toward the Cape Cod Canal and over toward the Sandwich area. Chris?
Chris, we're going to get back to you in just a moment because we want to give you a moment to gather up some new information and the updated data. We do want to bring in 7's John Coco. He was down in Harwich. We had all of the storms yesterday showing us the downed trees and some of the damage that people were dealing with.
Yeah, he's headed down to the Cape. Now, John, are you with us? What are you seeing right now?
Well, so right now we're on State Road 149 in Barnstable, and we're driving right now, and I'm not sure if you can hear it through the phone, but it is pouring rain right now where we are in Barnstable. Driving conditions really, really difficult out here. I would say if anyone is planning on going out here in this area, I would stay home if you can in the meantime, because right now it's pouring outside, a lot of street flooding that from what we're seeing, a lot of very large puddles on the road. Really, really difficult driving conditions at this point.
John, so you're right at the cusp, right outside of where the tornado warning is, headed toward Falmouth. Are people heeding these warnings? Are they staying off the road?
Well, I would say at this point we're still seeing some people driving around this area. Not a lot of people, although it's a Monday morning on the Cape, so take that for what it is. I would say that this morning, just from the people that we spoke with in Harwich, the storms last night took a lot of people by surprise. I mean, even the fire chief said that to us, that they were taken by surprise with some of the damage and the wind and all that kind of stuff that they saw. So I think if that's any example, I think they're probably definitely going to heed that today because they don't want to be taken by surprise again. But we do see, people out here on the roads driving, and I just, want to reiterate, if people are thinking about going out and they're watching this right now, I would say stay home, wait for all of this to pass, make sure that you're safe, because right now driving is difficult. And then again, you also have that tornado warning.
John, what are you seeing in terms of strong winds? Are they getting gusty out ahead of the storm? Typically, when we have these severe thunderstorms, you're also getting a pretty good outflow, a pretty good push out ahead of it, which would start to work on into the Barnstable area. Are you seeing any gusty winds so far, or is it just more the torrential rains at the moment?
Chris, not that we can really feel driving in the car right now. I would say the one thing that is very noticeable is how hard the rain is coming down, but it's tough to gauge the wind just because the rain is coming down so hard and we are driving. We're in the car right now. So it's really difficult to tell. But again, the rain really coming down hard at this point.
John, are you seeing any sorts of damage yet? Any flooding or any tree branches down there?
So no tree branches or anything like that. But as I mentioned earlier, we are seeing some pretty large puddles on the road, puddles that could likely turn into street flooding very, very quickly. So definitely something that people need to watch out for. We've driven through, I would say, 3 or 4 pretty deep puddles that were really difficult to see because the rain is coming down so hard. So not like street flooding that, you think that you couldn't cross, but I could very easily see some of these puddles in some of these areas that we've passed through turning into some street flooding.
John, Coco, we're going to let you focus on getting to where you're going. Just be safe out there. And again, we're going to bring Chris Lambert back. You're watching this. We had all of those storms there yesterday. Yeah. And what we saw is you don't need a tornado to cause damage.
And to really get to that point, Hysola just showed me that there was a reported wind gust from Vineyard Haven of 69 miles an hour. That was on the north side of Martha's Vineyard. Remember, we were showing you that rotation and how we were concerned with that. Want to update you now. You notice this polygon that just popped? This is the newest tornado warning that is now in effect across the Cape. So this just came down from the National Weather Service here, and we're still concerned with that rotation that's very close to the new Seabury area, Mashpee Neck, over toward East Falmouth. This continues to work off to the east-northeast and has prompted another tornado warning that has been put down, placed from the National Weather Service. This tornado warning now goes until 12:15, so a second tornado warning has been prompted for the Cape. This one much more expansive here. You notice how that encompasses much of Route 6, heading from Barnstable over toward Yarmouth and Dennis, over to South Yarmouth as well. And this goes all the way along that south coast, West Yarmouth, Dennisport, all included in the latest tornado warning that is now in effect until 12:15. So we continue to track this severe weather here, and the concern has been the same cell that has prompted the warning. Now, the heaviest of the rotation, the strongest winds aloft that I do see is essentially skirting the south coast and right over the south coast of the Cape at the moment here. And the concern, this time of year is we got a lot of folks down there on vacation. So we have a lot of folks that are trying to get their vacation plans in, and the storms last night and now today have prompted back-to-back days of tornado warnings across much of the Cape. The strongest winds aloft that I see essentially right on the east side of the Falmouth area, as well as very close to the Mashpee area. I want to zoom in here and show you what we're looking at. Now, this storm did produce a wind gust just shy of 70 miles an hour across Vineyard Haven. So we're seeing almost the same signature here, where you get that peach color velocity showing winds aloft close to 70 miles an hour. So even if there's not a tornado or a waterspout that's necessarily on the ground, these storms have a history of producing at least a gust in some fashion, one way or the other, of close to 70 miles an hour. And you're now seeing that velocity scan here coming in at about 70 miles an hour just on the south side of Mashpee and the east side of Falmouth, with this cell that continues its journey off to the east-northeast. Now, on that last scan, some of the strongest winds now just going right offshore, but this is going to be very close to the south coast of Cape Cod as we go through the next half an hour to 40 minutes. And that is why we do have that tornado warning that is in effect essentially here until 12:15 for this cell that's working very close to the south coast. Let's put a storm track on it. I want to go through here and show you with this direction. South Yarmouth, about 12:05 with this direction in its motion, but you still have to be careful just even west of there. Craigville, we're talking about this system being very close. Osterville as well. Hyannis, this is the cell that has the capability of producing at minimum strong winds that would cause wind damage and at maximum perhaps a tornado if that rotation does tighten up enough where you are talking about that rotation reaching the ground. It's been tight enough where we have been talking about the tornado warning that's been in effect for this area and continues to be in effect for this area. So I want to show you the wider view again. This is the latest tornado warning from the National Weather Service. This does include a good chunk of Barnstable County, including Barnstable, Yarmouth, Hyannis, eastbound down Route 6, and then back in toward the Osterville area as well. Not only are you dealing with the potential of damaging wind gusts and a possible tornado if the rotation does tighten up enough, but you're also dealing with torrential rains. I mean, this would be very difficult to see if there was indeed a waterspout on the water or a brief tornado over land. So take your tornado precautions. If you're in this warned area, just wait out the storm. At lowest level of the building you're in, just get away from the doors and windows and ride it out here. So the old tornado warning from the eastern parts of Falmouth over to Mashpee will expire at 11:45, and then the new tornado warning goes until 12:15. So we still got a ways to go with this cell, and unfortunately has been tracking right through the Vineyard and now right along that south coast of Cape Cod, working off Mashpee, and now it's working right down that south side of the Cape. So the tornado warning is very expansive because you still have to watch a possible rotation trying to pick up here, even on the north side of that strong rotation, because you get these lines of strong winds aloft, and every once in a while they rev up or rev down. So you still could get damaging wind gusts up toward Barnstable here, but the biggest rotation at the moment that we see is down right along the immediate south coast and skirting some of those beaches along the south coast. Harwich, again, I think about 12:05. I mean, you got hit hard last night. Now you have another incoming storm that will be capable of producing at minimum some damaging wind gusts, and obviously the concern is that it tightens up enough that you can get a tornado out of it, and that's why we do have the tornado warning in place. We did have a wind gust reported of 69 miles an hour down across Martha's Vineyard on the north side of the vineyard there, so we continue to be concerned with this cell regardless of whether it produces a waterspout or tornado. The fact is that it is producing some damaging wind gusts and has a history of that rotation. Very soupy air mass in place, and with the high humidity in place and a lot of rotation in place with this wave of low pressure riding on by, the atmosphere atmosphere is primed for some rotating storms, and the potential earlier for the waterspouts when this was over the water, and now the potential that it's getting closer and closer to the coastline. The concern is that we may have a potential waterspout leading to a tornado when that rotation does come over land. Very close to the south coast of the Cape at the moment.
We had that tornado warning yesterday for parts of the Cape. Is this all part of that same big system? Are they two separate systems? And because we saw that rotation yesterday, you're seeing it again today. Do you expect that this system can produce even the more possibilities of potential tornadoes later in the day? Is this a system that can spawn that type of rotation?
This is it. This is going to be for the next hour, I would say, across the Cape. After that, we're finished. It is part of the same system, and essentially what happened is that you had the front come through. You felt the change yesterday. We lowered the humidity. We cooled off the temperatures, but the front did not clear the coast. So when you have one side of the area with a northeasterly wind and then the other side of the area, which is the Cape and the Islands at the moment, in a south wind, you're very close to the warm front. In fact, the warm front is just north of much of the Cape at the moment. When you're just on that south side and you have an area of low pressure ride right along it, you watch out for these triple points where these air masses are very close together and you can get that rotation. We saw that last night set up over the same area. That front, after those thunderstorms, drifted just to the south and then this morning bounced back to the north. So what happened? Another wave of low pressure came along that same front and is now producing the opportunity of some rotating thunderstorms once again. So it is part of the same system. However, this is done after this. We have the chance of some showers overnight tonight, especially down through the Cape and the Islands, but that front is going to manage to push far enough to the south that all of us get on the cooler side of the front, so to speak, and that will limit any threat of severe weather. So we're on the side down through the Cape where you are concerned about that severe weather, especially right at that south coast there. We want to zoom in on this, and you are looking right now at that tornado warning in the red polygon. You notice the nature of this. This is Craigville getting very close. You folks there, I would take your tornado precautions, head into the lowest level of the building that you're in and get away from the doors and the windows because we are seeing that rotation in that Craigville area, as well as talking about quite a bit of winds aloft. And even if there isn't a tornado, there is very strong winds aloft, and you're likely going to see some powerful gusts come out of that. We saw that yesterday with these severe thunderstorms that came on through, severe thunderstorm warning cells that did produce quite a bit of damage down trees. And those were wind gusts, you know, not to say only 50 miles an hour, but those were wind gusts about 50 miles an hour. So even a 50-mile-an-hour wind can do quite a bit of damage. So that is the concern there. We just recently had a wind gust to almost 70 miles an hour down across the vineyard on that last pass with this cell that did produce that. So I want to take a little bit of a closer look. This is right in that area where you're seeing some of the strongest winds aloft, if not that rotation. Osterville, Craigville, this is going to be working in toward the Hyannis area. You notice some of these light greens. This is just indicating some stronger winds aloft going in one direction. And then when you get into some of these lighter pinks and even some peach color areas, you are talking about winds going in another direction. And what you do is you watch out for essentially that light color green and that light color peach meeting up close together. It's an indication that the rotation is ramping up, and when you see that rotation very close, tighten up, it is more capable of producing what we'd call either a water spout if it's over the water, or perhaps a brief tornado over land. So we're going to continue to see that. Locations that we could have a water spout right on that south side, that would include Stage Harbor Light, Hyannisport, and you get over to Point Gammon there. And then we're also watching that the potential here of very heavy rain. So we're going to continue to watch that too. This is very tropical-like downpours in the atmosphere. So strong winds aloft. I want to show you the radar image here. You start to see some of these peach colors showing up, and you're talking about winds aloft very close to 70 miles an hour. So we have the tornado warning that's in effect until 12:15 because of the strong thunderstorms to severe thunderstorms that have persisted. This has been a long track cell too. I mean, we've tracked this just across Long Island, south of Long Island, south of Block Island, now through the Vineyard. Vineyard and now up into the Cape Cod area, and we continue to watch the potential of some strong winds aloft and rotation aloft too once in a while. That has prompted that tornado warning, and we'll continue to track that here. I want to show you the radar, what it looks like. You know, this is your standard radar where you see the rain. What's necessarily to note too is oftentimes you don't necessarily get that classic hook in a type of atmosphere like this. It's more looking at the velocity scans that you have to pick out some of the rotation, because this is just tremendous downpours coming on through with rain rates about 2 to 4 inches an hour now near the Barnstable area. And then you look over at the radar and the velocity scan of the radar, and this is the more, you know, non-traditional way of looking at it. But, you know, with technology, we have a great view of what's going on now these days with the velocities, and you can pick out where the strongest winds are either moving toward the radar or away from the radar. And you get most concerned when they're very close together. Want to show you what happens, you know, if these were sort of close together, you saw the dividing line, but the winds were pushing apart. That's more of a straight line wind signature. When you start to see them very close together, that's more of a rotation, especially when you start to see these little kinks and these little, you know, hooks showing up in the radar images. Not to say that it's definitive that there's a waterspout or tornado that's making contact, but it just enhances the opportunity and really enhances the threat when you do see some strong rotation. And again, regardless, you know what, we're seeing some gusts 60 to 70 miles an hour. We saw that across the Vineyard, and that's also a big concern as we go through the next 15 to 30 minutes here in Barnstable area, and then eventually farther off to the north and to the east. So we continue to see that warning going forward here until 11:45. Guys, do you have any updates at what you're seeing?
We do want to check in with John Coco and see what the conditions are like. He was driving through Barnstable, headed toward Falmouth. And John, you were really stressing how rough it was to drive through the heavy, heavy rain. Are things improving at all, or are you still in the middle of this downpour?
Yeah, Chris, I definitely would not say that things are improving. If not, if anything, they're getting worse, to be honest with you. Right now we're on State Road 28, and the rain has only continued to come down. I know earlier we mentioned that we've been driving through some of these really massive puddles. We're parked out in front of one right now. We decided to pull over, stop driving, get underneath an overhang, and luckily a gas station here in Contituate is allowing us to do that. But we're parked out in front of one of these massive puddles that we're talking about. You can see cars going through it and just how big and deep it is, along with the rain coming down. And just a few minutes ago, I sent out a tweet just to show the current driving conditions here on the Cape. And if you can take a look at that at some point, you can see just how difficult it is to drive around here, how dangerous it is with all of this rain coming down, and how wet these roads are and how big some of these puddles are.
John, are you what kind of kid have you been outside the car at all? I know before when we checked in with you, you were still driving. Now that you're stopped, have you been able to experience these gusty winds that we've been talking about?
Well, you know, we just pulled over. We're setting up our camera right now, so I haven't exactly jumped out of the car just yet. But I can tell you from looking at some of these trees blowing around here and some of, you know, the flags that have been up on places that we've passed, the winds are definitely picking up. But I would say from where we are right now, it's the rain, the water, the sheer amount of all of that is the biggest issue. But you can definitely tell that it is very windy as well right now. As I sit here in the car, I can see some of these trees blowing around.
Surprised, John, how quickly those puddles formed? It seems like you guys were driving along and all of a sudden you had to stop because of how quickly that water was rising.
You know, it doesn't necessarily surprise me, just because when it comes to weather, you can never take it lightly, especially here in Massachusetts, where we know that the weather can change on a dime. But it was amazing to see how quickly, you know, from the time this rain started, and then all of a sudden you have these massive puddles on the road, and you're thinking, you know, how could this have formed so quickly and gotten so big? But yeah, nothing surprises me when it comes to weather in Massachusetts. I mean, we've seen some pretty intense stuff, but I will say that, you know, in talking to some of the folks in Harwich, you know, their testimony was last night that, you know, it came in within a blink of an eye, all this weather had hit. And so that's sort of what we're seeing right now.
Do you think it'll be
All right, John, also, while we're having you on the phone, you were in Harwich. Sure. And you talked with a lot of the people there who had to deal with the downed trees. They have to deal with the cleanup that's going to continue today. Obviously, this is going to throw a big wrench into their plans for cleaning up. But when you hear Chris talking about these wind gusts, 71 miles an hour, I mean, we're getting close to hurricane force type winds. Downed trees, obviously, a strong possibility with what we're dealing with here today.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, just from what I saw from last night, there were trees ripped right up from the roots. And if the wind gusts are going to reach 70-plus miles an hour like Chris is talking about, that is absolutely a possibility out here again today. And that's something that people need to watch out for. Like I said, we saw trees literally ripped right up from the ground. There were branches all over the place in Harwich. A lot of people cleaning up, trying to get those trees chopped up, taken out, but this is definitely going to throw a wrench in that cleanup today, and who knows, potentially even make it worse if the wind gusts get really, really intense.
Chris Lambert has some questions for you as well.
So you've encountered a lot of the torrential rains, correct? Where exactly are you guys right now? Sorry, I missed
right
that.
Right now we're on State Route 28 in Contituate, and so that's where we're seeing some of the rains. But we've been going from Harwich up to, we were initially making our way to Falmouth. But like I said, we pulled over, decided to get under some cover to a place where we could, safely pull over and see what the conditions are.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. You got to be careful coming back to try to get into some of these storms. The strongest part of the storm now is approaching West Yarmouth. Radar is indicating 70-mile-an-hour winds just aloft. So not only do we have the tornado warning in place, but also concerned that there could be some gusts close to 70 miles an hour. We saw that across Vineyard Haven. So, John, if you guys are turning back around and coming in toward, from the west side of the storm, that storm is going to be moving away from you. Just be careful going too far into the storm, because you don't want to find yourself in those strong winds as well. How have the roads been in terms of the rain? Have you guys seen a lot of flooding down there?
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely seen some flooding on the streets. I would say that the rain, from what we've experienced, has definitely been the worst part so far. You can't really see too far in front of you with in the car. I took a few videos from the passenger seat here, and just to show how difficult it is driving right now. So I would say the rain has been, for us at least, the most difficult part. But like I said, those winds are definitely intense as well.
All right, thanks. Yeah, with some of the strongest winds now are approaching Hyannisport, so we can see that on the radar. And I just want to show you the update here on the radar and the velocity signature, and you can clearly see some of these very strong winds aloft now showing up in and around Hyannisport. Here's your Route 28. John is on 28. This is now moving off to the east-northeast, so the tornado warning does continue until 12:15. So even if you don't get a tornado, we are talking about some very strong winds aloft in the area. And even last night, John was coming from Harwich, a few gusts near 50 miles an hour in Harwich. That was good enough to give you tree damage. We've recently had a gust with this thunderstorm to 69 miles an hour across Vineyard Haven. So not only is it producing strong winds, it's even stronger than some of the winds that we had last night with the tornado warnings that were produced. And you can continue to see the signature of some strong winds aloft too once you work your way north of Route 6. You're in the tornado warning across the northern half of Cape Cod too, and the reason for this here, at least the northern half of the lower to mid Cape, the reason for that is sometimes these velocities, these rotation velocities here can ramp up right along that line. So we are watching that carefully too, but the strongest winds aloft seem to be close to the south coast. Not sure if you guys have any updated information from the anchor desk?
Not yet. We're still waiting to get that new info, and I know Heisel's been getting us some as well. Right now, we're just really watching where the system goes and seeing this rotation develops into anything that reaches down to the ground, Chris. And what John was talking about, and we were talking about earlier, is in Harwich, we saw those down trees and other parts of the Cape. We hear about the down trees in the winter, and that's by the weight of the snow and the weight of the ice. Different story here because they're in full bloom, and you have those like wind sails essentially.
Not only that, think of it too. With last night's rain, and now the ground is saturated, so that can loosen up some of the roots and how grounded they are. So today may be a little bit easier for a few of those trees to to get knocked over with a wind gust of 50 miles an hour. And that's what we saw last night, a lot of gusts 45 to 50 miles an hour. So far, we have seen a couple of gusts in and around 50 to 58 on the Cape. Mashpee recorded a wind gust of 58 miles an hour with this thunderstorm, 69 miles an hour down through the vineyard. And of course, the key to this too is we're also watching the rotation and not only the strong winds aloft. And some of that rotation is right now sitting right over very close to Hyannisport. Chris, Madeline?
Chris, we just want to reset real quickly because we're about to hit the 12 o'clock hour and we're watching 7 News here at noon, where obviously the big story here today is this tornado warning that's affecting Barnstable County and other parts of Cape Cod. As we continue to follow these developments and hoping this doesn't develop into an actual tornado, but we're seeing the rotation here as you're watching 7 News at noon. Breaking news coverage of this tornado warning for Barnstable County that's been extended for at least another 15 minutes. And we'll have to wait and see what the National Weather Service says about extending that window even further.
Yeah, National Weather Service, though, issuing this warning, talking about the impact as well that this could potentially have. Flying debris is something that people want to look out for. That's why you don't want to be outside when this is going on, because you could get hit with flying debris. Also, mobile homes are expected to be damaged or destroyed by this. They also talk about damage to roofs, windows, and vehicles that will happen. So you want to really stay away from windows, doors. Don't be in your car. Try to be in the center of the building you're in.
Because when
right
you see this rotation that Chris has been pointing out, and we'll bring you in right now, Chris, where you see that rotation, that's where these storms could develop and then reach down from the clouds, and then all of a sudden we have a tornado that we're dealing with.
So what essentially you're looking for is some of these lighter greens to start matching up with some of the lighter reds in the pink-colored areas. Do see there's a couple different signatures you can go with. One is going to be a downburst, straight line wind signature. That right now is more apparent closer to the Dennis and Yarmouth area, but with these lines of different wind directions very close is because the cell is producing winds both going toward the radar and away from the radar. When they're close together, if they increase in velocity away from that line, that shows me that it's pushing outward. When you start getting these light pinks and some of these almost peach colors very close to some of these more neutral colors, if not the greens, that's indicating that there is pretty strong rotation, and you get more concerned with that because of the potential of it wrapping up into either a water spout very close to the coastline, or in this case perhaps even a tornado that would be touching down. So these are the areas that we continue to watch here, right across the mid-Cape. This is working its way right along the coastline. It is east of Craigville now. It is working its way very close to 28. It's very close into the West Dennis area, eventually coming through Dennisport, West Harwich as well. These are some of the same locations that got hit last night with quite a bit of wind and some tree damage. So the cleanup efforts really hampered here as we go through noon, and perhaps even adding to what needs to be done with the cleanup effort here as we continue to track these strong winds. Notice this peach color right here, bottom side of the screen. I'm going to click on a velocity. That's 76 miles an hour that the radar is picking up on just off the ground. So this is a storm that has a history of producing a wind gust that was measured across Vineyard Haven at 69 miles per hour, and it continues to show these strong wind signatures aloft. So even if you don't get a tornado, these are severe thunderstorms that are producing quite a bit of wind aloft and pushing it down toward the surface. So let's recap the tornado warning. The tornado warning is until 12:15. Let's zoom in and show you the area where we do have that tornado warning. This does encompass quite a bit of the Harwich area, stretching up almost to the southwest corner of Brewster, back to Dennis, Yarmouth, and over through Barnstable here until 12:15. You notice that there's not a clear cut, what we would call a hook echo. When you start getting into a tropical air mass in these complexes of showers and storms, sometimes your rotation doesn't give you a clear-cut hook echo in terms of what the radar looks like when it's taking the rain reflectivity here and the hail reflectivity here. What you have to look for is those velocity scans that I've been showing you a lot of over the last hour or so, and that's indicating where the strongest winds aloft are and where you actually have some rotation. So this is the tornado warning that's in effect until 12:15. And if the storm continues to produce a lot of wind aloft, you know what? This may get extended past this area, Chatham, perhaps up toward Wellfleet as we go through near 12:30. at minimum, maybe, a severe thunderstorm warning could be in place. So this is what I'm watching here, and on the last frame, this is what we get concerned of. I mentioned sometimes some of these very light greens showing right up next to those brighter colors there. You can clearly see that right there on Route 6, essentially working its way down Route 6, very close to the South Dennis area. So I'm going to zoom in into this area. West Yarmouth, West Dennis, I should say, South Yarmouth, South Dennis. This is the storm that we are tracking here, moving off to the east-northeast, right down Route 6. So if you live in South Dennis, you need to take your tornado precaution. You want to get inside, lowest level of the building that you're in, and away from the doors and windows, because we continue to see a ramp up in some of the velocities that are now apparent in that area. So we continue to track this dangerous storm that's at least capable of producing 60 to 70 mile per hour gusts, if not a brief tornado. So we continue to see that as we go through what's going on. So looking at a recent tweet from the National Weather Service here, report from the National Weather Service saying a radar-confirmed tornado in South Yarmouth. What essentially the radar can also do is show you what the correlation of what the atmosphere looks like, and in terms of hitting all these different raindrops or different pieces of debris in the air. And if you get some of these different signatures showing up on the radar, it just indicates that the returns are different. We call it correlation coefficient. If you start getting these different returns coming back to the radar showing you different pieces aloft, that indicates that there's likely a tornado. And the National Weather Service saying, the radar likely confirming that there was a tornado in the South Yarmouth area. This continues its journey here off to the east-northeast at about 30 to 35 miles an hour. So you folks, South Yarmouth, West Dennis, South Dennis, West Harwich, you do need to take your tornado precautions and take them seriously here because we do have a very dangerous thunderstorm that continues to slide off to the east-northeast, possibly producing a tornado continuing at this moment as it continues its journey off to the east-southeast here at about 30 miles an hour. It's getting more and more of a concern with some of these radar reflectivities coming in over the South Yarmouth area. Again, you look at some of the correlation coefficients here and beginning to see that there could be some debris that's been lofted in the air. That can be some tree leaves that gets picked up by the thunderstorm or other small debris, and that would be an indication that there has been a tornado that has touched down, especially when we start talking about these different colors, these light peaches close to the greens, indicating that rotation. So I want to take a little bit of a wider view here and just reset it and show you where this is ongoing. This is right in the Yarmouth area, pushing off to the east-northeast at about 35 miles per hour, and as it does so, capable of continuing still producing a tornado in that area. I want to draw here a storm track on it, push it through for the next 30 minutes or so, and give you some timelines here. That thunderstorm that's capable of producing the tornado will likely be moving out of South Yarmouth, heading toward West Harwich and Harwich by about 12:13, and all the indications are that we may be extending this warning, beyond that polygon toward East Harwich and Chatham as we go through that 12:15 hour. Now that we have the radar confirming a potential, confirming a tornado touching down, thanks to some of that lofted debris up into the sky. So we've been talking about this storm and in this location for quite some time now, and some confirmation via radar from the National Weather Service that indeed that we have some debris. We can switch that.
I'll let you.
Yeah, can we switch to graphics 2? I don't control them. I want to show you on graphics 2 one of these other radar products that we got. I was talking about the correlation coefficient. If you zoom in on that, there it is in Harwich. You see that yellow spot there? Yeah. This is another important product because what the radar can do is it can send out a beam, and it sends out this beam. And as it sends out the beam, if most of what it's hitting is rain, it returns all kind of the same energy. If it's returning different sized debris, and it can tell that because it's actually going in the horizontal and vertical spectrum there. If it starts returning different sized debris, it knows that there is more to it than just raindrops, tree leaves, perhaps a piece of roof or whatnot. So when you get these low correlated numbers starting to show up, it means that it's picking up on things in the air of all different sizes, and it likely confirms a tornado. So we're now likely seeing a confirmed tornado on the ground approaching Harwich at the moment. So not only is this a very dangerous situation, you're also going to be dealing with torrential rains too. Do not go outside. Do not try to observe this. You need to get into the lowest level of the building that you're in and away from doors and windows. So this is a useful product, and the radar technology can come a long way. I was showing you those velocities quite a bit, showing the potential of 70-mile-an-hour gusts and the tightening of that rotation. Now we have radar confirmation that the correlation here of what the radar is seeing all different sizes, which also means it's raindrops out there. It can be some tree leaves that have been picked up and lofted in the air. It can be a piece of shingle, all sorts of debris that can get lofted up. The radar sees that and is now showing that on the radar very
Chris,
close to the
give me the
Harwich
areas
area.
of concern right now. So if you're in Harwich, if you're in Yarmouth, what are some of the other spots right now?
So Harwich, Yarmouth, and this is moving off to the east-northeast pretty quickly here. So anywhere right along that Route 6 stretch, even eventually over to Chatham. But it's all these locations that are just in the Harwich area, points east, Dennisport, very close to that area as well. So we continue to track that.
If you're in those areas, and we really can't stress this enough, pay attention to what Chris is saying, and pay attention to this. We want you to stay indoors first and foremost. This isn't something to go outside and look at, try to capture video of. Get to the lowest point in your home. If you have a basement, go there. If not, find the center point of your home. You want to get away from those windows and doors.
And we can't stress enough. I mean, Chris, you just said that debris it's been confirmed by radar that debris has been flying up in the air, and that's the type of debris that the National Weather Service has actually warned people about. That flying debris can be dangerous if you're outside, so you need to get indoors immediately, get into shelter, stay away from windows, things like that.
We're going to get back to you in a moment, Chris. We do want to check in with Jeremy Reiner, our chief meteorologist, who is actually in Truro. He's on the Cape right now, and Jeremy, we saw some rough and tumble weather yesterday in Harwich and other parts of the Cape, even had a tornado warning. Now it looks like this tornado warning is holding true with this tornado radar detected in Yarmouth.
Yeah, this is a game changer. This is they call it a TDS, tornado debris signature. And so what Chris and High Sol have been showing you this morning, the correlation coefficient, what the radar is detecting is debris which has been lofted up into the air, and the debris could be anywhere from paper forks to shingles to pieces of wood, and so when you have that debris, you know that you've got a legitimate funnel that's been lifting material off of the earth and up into the sky where the radar beam can detect it. So this is a serious situation on the Cape. Unlike last night where we didn't have a confirmation, this is now confirmed tornado thanks to the tornado debris signature. It continues to basically move east-northeast. It looks like, between Route 6 and 28, Route 39, 137, those locations, if you live inside of that box right there from about Pleasant Lake down to Harwich and East Harwich, it does continue to move east-northeast at about 40 to 45 miles per hour. The storm has a history of wind damage. We've seen several reports of trees down in the Mashpee area earlier with this cell. And obviously with the TDS, the tornado debris signature that you're seeing on the screen right now, East Harwich in particular is, when I look at that, that's the concern I have. Basically out toward the Hawks Nest State Park and Eastward Ho Country Club and Cape Cod National Golf Club along Route 39, which runs basically from southwest up to northeast. And then you have Route 137, which drops in from northwest to southeast. And then you've got Route 6 there that kind of cuts right in the middle there. So it's right in that portion of the Cape where we've got this tornado heading east-northeast, and then it's going to, eventually work its way up. It'll likely stay south of Nickerson State Park. It's going to likely stay south of Orleans. You can see right now what we're showing you is the wind velocity. So you've got the bright greens and you've got those really hot pinks, Harwich. That's where we've got the tornado, and that's likely where we've also got winds. Even if you don't have the tornado per se, you've still got a storm capable of producing 70-mile-per-hour winds with this thunderstorm moving east and northeast. Basically, between Route 6 and Route 28 is the concern. I was trying to break it down a little bit more there. Route 137, which will connect Brewster to Harwich. I'm not worried as much up toward Brewster, but basically 137 from Brewster to Harwich, and then down toward Chatham, and then looping back up toward Orleans. That's what we're seeing right now. Has anybody been able to safely snap a pic?
No, not yet. We're not getting in any pictures yet, and we'll try to share them as soon as we get them in. But, Jeremy, the National Weather Service did just send out an extension just a moment ago till 12:45, which makes sense when you see how the storm is moving toward Chatham. If you're in these affected areas, if you're in East Harwich, South Dennis, Dennisport, Chatham, all of these places, what do they need to do right now, Jeremy?
Well, they, if you're watching this from about Barnstable down toward Hyannisport, you're clear. It's the concern I have is Harwich, East Harwich, Chatham, up toward Brewster, possibly Orleans if it holds together. You should be executing a safe plan, which, most folks probably don't have one on the Cape because you don't normally have tornadoes on the Cape. So what you're going to want to do is your lowest interior room in your house or your apartment, stay away from the west-facing windows because even if it's not a tornadic signature coming through these communities, the storm has had a history of wind damage. It's had a history of knocking down several trees in the Mashpee area. We've seen winds gusting over upwards of 70 miles per hour, and that will be coming in from the west and the southwest up to the northeast. So stay away from west-facing windows, lowest interior room, a bathroom or a laundry room or, some kind of a basement area is the safe place to be over the next 15 to 30 minutes.
Hey, JR, it's your co-pilot here. Good to talk to you. Wish it was a different situation, but here we are. Want to talk more about the setup. You and I, we were actually talking back and forth earlier this morning how the Cape and the Islands may be susceptible to some severe weather today, essentially with the warm front just to the north and the wave of low pressure riding by. You want to talk more about these tropical air masses and what makes it more susceptible to severe weather on a day like today?
Well, you've got the humid air, which, that's not that unusual on the Cape. So, when you have humid, warm air, it's very buoyant, meaning you can lift it real easily. What is unusual this morning, there's a lot of wind energy associated with this humid air. And so you've got a warm front draped across the south coast. And so that wind energy has been passing through that warm front and passing through the thunderstorms. And so the wind shear, which is, wind changing speed and direction as you go up higher into the atmosphere, that's twisting and turning the air inside of these thunderstorms. And so that's the unusual setup that we have going on this morning, in the atmosphere. We saw it a little bit last year when we had the tornado warning on the Cape. We didn't have a tornado, but we had a tornado warning on the Cape. I think it was the day after the Sox clinched the series. I remember doing a cut-in for that. So, obviously it's been a little bit chaotic these last 24 hours, but, once this jumps off Cape next half hour, I think we're okay the rest of the day, but certainly we've got to get through the next half hour because, when I'm looking on the screen right here, those hot pink colors and peach colors out along 28, basically between Harwich, East Harwich, and then south toward Chatham, that's the concern. And then farther north, along Route 6 there and to the east of 124, you've got that green and the red. So that's that turning of the winds, the rotating of the wind.
Yeah, we also, JR, we had a report of a 90-mile-per-hour gust very close to Hyannisport. And not surprising now, too, the tornado warning has been extended to 12:45. This does include Orleans over to Chatham as well as the storm continues to move off to the east-northeast at about 30 miles an hour.
Yeah, it's I'm out here and I'm in Truro, and I don't think I have to worry about my safe plan. I think it's going to stay south of me, but it's certainly, if you're watching us from Eastham and Orleans and Brewster and Harwich, obviously right now, and Chatham, those are the areas of concern at this time. Again, tornado warning until 12:45 this afternoon. You can see the red polygon. You notice back to the west, back toward Barnstable and Hyannisport, the worst of the storm has come through there, so you're clear. But now we focus basically out toward the elbow of the Cape. Route 6, 39, 28, and that continues to move off to the north and east at about 40 miles per hour. The concern that I'm looking at right now, it's almost like it's a two-pronged issue. You've got the peach colors down toward Chatham, and those would almost correspond to perhaps straight line winds gusting 70, maybe 75 miles per hour. And then farther north, you've got the turning. It's almost like you've got the twisting of the wind and rotation a little bit farther north. But right there, as you zoom in, right on top of East Harwich, that hot peach, that peach color there, with winds, clocked at about 70 miles per hour. And we already have ground truth on that. You said that when that came through Hyannisport, that we had a gust to 90. And so, this means business. This serious storm continues to barrel east toward Chatham, as well as the outer Cape, out toward Orleans, and perhaps as far north as Eastham over the next 15 to 30 minutes.
And there are some of the roads zooming in right now. I'm going to stop this just so folks can get a better idea of what is going on. Right over East Harwich here, over to Chatham, you are talking about those very strong winds aloft on a storm not only that has likely produced a tornado, but also straight line damaging gusts. I mean, we had a report of Vineyard Haven, 69 miles an hour, very close to Hyannisport, 90 miles an hour out of a gust with this part of the storm that's now over East Harwich. And if you look at some of these colors coming up that are in that peach color, that's 70 to 75 mile an hour winds aloft here. This is Route 39 that extends from East Harwich north and obviously 28 east toward Chatham. JR, as you're here, you're into the heavy rains. Talk a little more about tropical rains too with this. And we've been telling people don't go out, don't try to see anything that's going on. With a lot of tropical moisture in place, likely rain wrap, do your safety precautions.
Yeah, I'm up here in Truro. I have winds and I have rain. I don't have much in the way of lightning and thunder. I had a light show last night, but right now it's just more of a constant battering of the rain and the wind. I don't have damaging wind right now at where I'm at, but I'm on the northern flank of the whole issue. The greatest concern is down at the bottom of that screen right now, along Route 39 and 137 heading north and east up toward the Cape Cod National Golf Club and Eastward Ho Country Club. And then as you extend farther north, Nickerson State Park, that's also an area of concern. But I think that the core of the wind right now is focused just to the west of Chatham, East Harwich, along 137 and 39, that location right there. And then out toward 28, which is out by the Eastward Ho Country Club. You've got Church Street out there, Pleasant Bay Road. That's all kind of smaller roads that fork off of Route 39. That's the concern that I've got right now for damaging wind, serious wind, winds that, capable of gusting around 70 miles per hour as the cell continues to move north and east. Now, farther north, it doesn't look like the rotation is as strong as you work up toward north of Nickerson State Park, up toward Orleans or Eastham. Is that what you guys are seeing back at the studio?
Yeah, definitely seeing that, as the rotation not as strong and the winds aloft not quite as strong as well. It does look like down across the East Harwich area over to Chatham, this is really where the winds aloft are very strong, close to 75 miles an hour. Hisol had mentioned, she showed me a report also near the Dennis area. We had a recent gust of close to 79 miles an hour in West Dennis at 12:10 when that storm rolled on in. And you have right on the south side of Hyannis there had near the Lewis Bay a gust to near 90 miles an hour. We also saw a gust 69 miles an hour on the northern side of the Vineyard over to Vineyard Haven. So these are the storms that this is the storm that's produced not only the likely tornado but also these very strong wind gusts. And last night when the thunderstorms passed on through, JR, a lot of the winds were about 45 to 50 to 55 miles per hour. So with these numbers, you'd expect the tree damage to be a lot more than what we saw last night.
Yeah, totally. I've already seen a report of several trees down through the town of Mashpee, and obviously it's probably, it has not been safe to go out in Dennis and Hyannisport with those numbers to report damage. But I can, I know the damage reports are going to start going up once law enforcement and Skywarn can safely get out and beginning assessing the storm. But of immediate concern right now is that tornado warning until 12:45. It looks like the concern is going to be some strong winds that will move through Chatham proper within the next few minutes here. It does look like it's weakening, but again, even in Chatham proper, out toward Chatham Light, along Route 28, that will take you out of Chatham and then kind of merge up toward 39. That's the concern there, where you've got some winds that are capable of gusting. Perhaps as I look at that, it's lost some of the peach coloring, but still, maybe we're talking winds gusting, 60 to 70 miles per hour instead of over 70 miles per hour. And then farther north, the storm is generating wind, but it doesn't look like it's the tight rotation, the tight green and the tight red tucked up next to each other, like we saw earlier with this morning up toward Orleans and Eastham. So you can see there is green there and there's red, but it's not tightly packed together. So that doesn't tell me there's strong rotation up there. I still think the concern is primarily focused coming out of Harwich now and moving through Chatham. Then this will scoot out into off the Cape here in the next 5 to 10 minutes.
Jeremy, this is Madeline here. I wanted to ask you we saw the storm damage from yesterday's storm. A lot of people seem to be caught off guard by that, even, surprised by it. Are you surprised by the strength of yesterday's storm and maybe definitely today's storm as well? Is this something you foresaw?
Well, Josh and Chris, they were back at the mothership last night, and so they mentioned stronger storms. And, looking at the data, you could certainly see that there was going to be one more batch of storms that would come through southeastern Mass today and midday. Initially, it looked like it might stay south of the Cape. It looked like it might actually move across the islands and focus more on Martha's Vineyard or Nantucket. But the storms, they sometimes have a mind of their own. And if the analogy is if you roll a bowling ball down the alley, the ball is going to wobble a little bit. And so that's likely what happened with this thunderstorm. It was wobbling a little, and it just kind of gyrated back north a little bit and brought up across the Cape instead of moving due east, south of the Cape. But, I talked about this last night with Kim and Adam. If you've got humidity, and that's a given this time of year in the Cape. If you have that combined with strong low level winds, then it can happen. Is basically what it is that you can get these rotating thunderstorms regardless of where you are in the world. But obviously it is certainly unusual to be having back-to-back conversations within 15 hours of each other of tornado warnings across the Cape.
Yeah, and that's what we have seen. We've been talking about what's going on here last night and again this morning. You're finding yourself just to the south of the warm front across the Cape. And this is what's going on at the moment. The tornado warning continuing until 12:45 here. But as JR mentioned, you get a feeling that this is going to be offshore within the next 5 or 10 minutes in terms of that rotation, where it is right over the Chatham area, very up close to the Eastham area as well. You notice some of the stronger velocities showing up right along the southern side of the Cape, now sliding off to the east. We do have some wind up toward Wellfleet and Truro, but the rain is more of an issue up that way toward Provincetown than anything else. So we continue to see some of these stronger winds aloft. It's about to slide off the Cape here, and then once we get beyond this storm, we're done. We're likely going to be able to dry it out, and even though we have some showers in the forecast, JR, it's important to note that tomorrow morning will actually be all of us on the cooler side of that front, as some of the heavier showers and storms are farther off to the south. So no more tropical amounts of humidity and wind to work with.
Yeah, and right. Don't get me wrong. I love meteorology, but 3 days in a row of talking about tornadoes, I'm not a fan of that. So why don't we just wrap it up here and we can all get on with our business. But certainly there's going to be some pickup, some storm cleanup here for many communities on the Cape. And, as you noted, the last thing you want is hot, humid, muggy air for that, and that's not going to happen. This front will jump offshore slowly tonight and tomorrow, and for the remainder of the week, you don't have any concern of tornadoes. And for those that, have some disruption to deal with in the coming days, they'll have some good weather for storm cleanup, no doubt about that.
Jeremy, it's Chris here. The other Chris. and you, like most people, it's summertime. You're on Cape Cod. You're having or trying to enjoy your vacation the best you can. And obviously, we're watching this tornado and the path of it very closely. But also, when you hear these wind gusts, 78 miles an hour in West Dennis, 90 miles an hour in Hyannisport, I mean, these are hurricane-strength winds. So it almost seems like you don't even have to be in the path of where this rotation in the tornado is to experience some of the damage or potential damage that we could see here.
No, correct. Yeah, it was, you know, it was kind of, the storm had just an incredible amount of wind energy. And so even though it may not have produced a tornado back in Mashpee, and, you know, the storm surveyors will take care of that part of the story, straight line wind damage, you know, 90-mile-per-hour winds, whether it's straight lines or tornadic, is still going to be quite disruptive for people. And, thankfully now, though, it looks like, as I'm looking on radar data, it does look like the core of the strongest wind is now jumping east of Chatham Light and heading northeast out into the Atlantic. So still will officially carry this tornado warning for about another 15 minutes or so. But, you know, I think the worst of it is over. And now we just make sure that, you know, people are okay and accounted for, and then start the storm cleanup process.
Okay. All right. We just want to remind you, you're watching 7 News at 12:30 here. We're under a tornado warning. Parts of Barnstable County and parts of the Cape under a tornado warning right now that's been extended to 12:45. Parts Barnstable.
And a lot more, you know, we want to get right over to Chris because we've been watching the path and we've talking with you. We were talking with Jeremy, and obviously good reason to be concerned here.
Yeah, and essentially what JR was saying was that he was watching, you know, some of those higher velocity scans start to move offshore. Now seeing that in Chatham, beginning to watch that storm taper off there, points to the west. So you're still technically under the tornado warning, but it's just the northeast corner, very on the north side of Chatham, up closer to Wellfleet there, that you're still concerned with some gusty winds. But once you look at the velocity scans, you can clearly see the strongest winds now moving offshore as they continue to push off to the east here, and that is the good news. And once you get beyond this storm, there is not much in its wake. In fact, we are beginning to quiet it on down. So you're technically still in the tornado warning from Orleans to Harwich, but the worst is now off to the east of you. Of course, not only do we have the strong velocities showing up on the radar, but we also had radar indicated tornado debris signature showing up very close to the South Yarmouth area, and that did indicate the damage, because what the correlation of the radar does show is that what the radar beam was hitting was all different sizes. Could be some tree leaves, some pieces of a roof shingle, raindrops out there, and that indicates that there was likely damage on the ground and confirmation by radar that a tornado likely touched down there. Not only that, we had winds gusting close to 90 miles an hour back toward Hyannisport, a 79-mile-an-hour gust near Dennis, 69-mile-per-hour wind gust as we walked through the northern side of the vineyard there back about an hour or so ago, once these tornado warnings really started taking shape. JR, right now what I'm looking at is that the velocities are now offshore. You want to talk more about the setup and what we were watching as we rolled through the last half an hour to an hour, and what we'll look forward to here over the next 15 to 30 minutes?
Yeah, so, I mean, thankfully, you know, watching you, looking at the data, you know, that big red paint bomb is offshore now. So that's the good news there, because that's the core of the strongest wind. Technically, there is still the warning until 12:45, but as Chris noted, once you know, basically all the way even Chatham, you know, the worst of it is now past. But what's happened is that, you know, the front that ended the intense heat over the weekend just kind of draped itself along the Connecticut shoreline and the south coast for the past 24 hours, and little waves of low pressure formed on that front, and then those waves of low pressure traveled along the front, much like a car on a highway. And so the added concern was that you had a lot of jet stream wind energy with those little areas of low pressure, and that's a little unusual. It's not unusual to have a front get stuck on the Cape. It's not unusual to have a humid morning. That's quite usual. But when you bring the wind speeds that were passing through these thunderstorms, they were a little higher than you normally see this time of year. That's something you might see, you know, in the spring or the fall. So when you have those higher wind speeds passing through those thunderstorms like last night and then this morning, it'll twist and turn the thunderstorm. It'll get the thunderstorm rotating. So last night when we had the tornado warnings, it was radar indicated tornado warning based on velocity data, or, the spinning of the air. Nothing was confirmed last night, and we didn't have winds. We had winds gusting, between 45 and perhaps high as 50 in the Harwich area. And then this morning, another little area of low pressure came up from Long Island and Block Island, and you and I were texting each other early this morning and said, hey, you might get a little bit crazy for a while, and you said, yep, we got it, got my eye on it, and so that had stronger wind. And so when we were starting to see winds being reported of 70, 80, perhaps high as 90 miles per hour, and then the real concern was that tornado debris signature, the TDS, where you're using that correlation coefficient. That was the radar actually detecting debris that the funnel lifted off of the ground, meaning pine cones, shingles, paper cups, paper, whatever it could be. Hopefully it's, wasn't damaging, but I'm sure there was. So when that debris is up into the cloud, that's a signal. It's okay. That's something that's been on the ground, and it's lofting stuff up into the sky, up into the clouds. So that's when we knew we had a tornado on the Cape about half hour, 45 minutes ago.
Just to update, that warning has now been canceled. It doesn't go to 12:45 as that storm is offshore. So we were watching, obviously tracking this storm over the last hour and a half. Had that debris signature on radar, and this won't come as a surprise, but the National Weather Service is now saying that they're in the preliminary steps of forming a damage survey team to investigate South Yarmouth, West Dennis area of Cape Cod. Those were the areas that were close to that 90-mile-per-hour wind that was registered close to the Hyannis area. Hyannisport, but also in West Dennis, there was a report of a 79-mile-per-hour gust. So it looks like we'll get confirmation either way, whether you're talking about rotation or talking about straight line winds. But all indications are that this is likely a tornado.
And Chris, what we're looking. And Jeremy as well, just to let everybody know, what you're looking at on the left side of your screen is video from Martha's Vineyard, and that's really where we first jumped on when that was an area of concern, right near Martha's Vineyard and the other islands.
But you can see the rain just pouring right there. And Chris, you mentioned these torrential downpours. We're seeing a lot of water out there, potentially some flooding too, right?
Yeah, we certainly have seen that over the last couple of hours. I will say this, that problem is going to rapidly get better now that the heaviest of the rain is offshore too. And you can see there's nothing else in the wake of this storm system here. So we are fortunate now we're not clearing on out. And as we go through the coming days, we're going to have some low humidity too. So undoubtedly there's going to be damage reports that continue to come out across parts of the Cape as we go throughout the day. And there's going to be really an assessment of what needs to get done to clean up. Now that this storm is offshore and there's no other storms in its wake to bother us as we go throughout the day. I want to show you something on graphics too. Hisol compiled a list of some wind gusts that we have seen. Again, the Hyannisport area, 90-mile-per-hour gust. Look at Chatham, 85-mile-per-hour gust. West Dennis at 79, Vineyard Haven at 69. Just some incredible winds being picked up. And these are being picked up at the sites where there's, an anemometer, something to measure, so you can imagine that, in between some of these sites, some of these winds were likely as strong, if not stronger. So we are concerned that there's going to be quite a bit of tree damage that comes out. Last night's tree damage occurred with winds gusting 45 to 50 to 55 miles per hour. And that tree damage, of course, not helped out by the fact that the trees are in full bloom here and you got your leaves out. They almost act like sails and act as more to enhance the force of the wind than anything else and put the stress on that tree. Left-hand side of the screen, you can see the torrential rains and some of the gusty winds on the video of Mashpee. That was another area we were concerned with earlier today of potentially seeing that tornado. Was warned. If you didn't see that tornado in the Mashpee area, I was mentioning that there was a lot of indications that there were straight line winds aloft that were very strong. There's your gust close to 60 miles an hour in Mashpee from that storm that came on through. And there's your video showing you those winds whipping around and certainly some of the heavy rain too. Barnstable gust of 53. This is just part of the list. Want to switch back to graphics 1, show you what's going on the radar right now, because fortunately we're now in the clear across much of the area. In fact, the heaviest rain now exiting off to the east of the East Ham and Wellfleet area. That's going to continue out to sea. This is the area that produced that likely tornado across the Yarmouth area, South Yarmouth, and very close to West Dennis as well. So the National Weather Service will form their team, send out a survey team, check out the damage, and give us any official thoughts and stats on that. But all indications are by radar that there was a tornado signature in that radar, debris signature at that. And what that was is that the radar this day and age can detect when it's just not all raindrops hitting the the radar energy that's going out. If it sees different sizes of objects in the sky, you know that it's not just raindrops. It can be leaves. It can be pieces of a roof shingle, other pieces of a tree branch gets lofted in the sky, and the radar is seeing all these different sorts of sizes coming back to the radar in terms of once its energy is sent out and comes back to the radar. And when you don't have these raindrops, matching up size by size by side, the correlation of those sizes is very low. So when you see these, low correlations on the radar, you know that it's likely a tornado debris signature that we did see. So here's a velocity scan. This is what's gone through Chatham. Mentioned before, and JR was mentioning too on the phone, that you did have a very strong wind aloft signature over Chatham, and that's confirmed with that wind gust on that list that High Sol was just showing us too, with a gust of 85 miles an hour in Chatham. So good riddance to this system. It was two different waves of low pressure along a front that created the severe weather last night and the severe weather over the last couple of hours. We're not going to see a reoccurrence of that as we go through the remainder of the day, or even with the showers overnight tonight. The energy that produced the severe weather is going to be off to the south of us. I want to give you a little bit of a wider view of what is going on across the area, and want to show you that this is it. I mean, there may be a spot shower or two, but we're watching a lot of this slide off to the east at the moment here and continue its journey offshore, guys.
We do also want to talk a little bit about some of the damage, but maybe not even the trees down or the flooding, but we do have some power outages. More than 10,000 people being reported in parts of the Cape without power right now. So you, again, don't need an actual tornado to cause the damage when you get these straight line winds and the wind gusts of up to 90 miles per hour. It's wild. I mean, we're talking hurricane force type winds, and you can see a lot of damage and power lines going down. So there's thousands and thousands of people now who don't have power.
Yeah, and we're seeing some of the conditions in this video off to your left of your screen here, getting some first looks at some of the conditions. The rain is just coming down, as you can see on the left of your screen here. Let's check back in with John Kogo. He's been down on the Cape this afternoon, getting a firsthand look at the conditions and some of the damage. You said you saw tree branches down. You're in Yarmouth, is that correct, John?
Right, yeah, we're in Yarmouth right now.
That tornado that the radar confirmed touched down in South Yarmouth, there, some of the strongest winds were seen there. There's bound to be damage where you are. What are you seeing at the moment?
So as we're talking right now, we just passed a tree in somebody's yard that had snapped, and as we speak, we're also pulling up on a scene where a tree has snapped and the road is blocked by police. So definitely some damage in this area. We are pulling up to that scene as we speak right now. We actually can't really go any further, to be honest with you, because there's a tree down across the road. Police have that road blocked. Some neighbors in this area are out taking a look at it. You can also see where somebody's porch umbrella has blown into their front yard. So we're definitely seeing some of that damage. It looks like, actually, sorry, as I'm taking a look here, it looks like not only did that tree come down across the road, but that tree came down across the road and a white pickup truck here, right across the hood of that pickup truck. So it doesn't look to be like there is any serious damage here, but let me get out of the car because we just pulled up. I'm going to walk up to the scene here and see what's going on while I have you guys here on the phone. Again, there's a big tree. It looks like it just snapped. I can't see any wires down across the road right now. It looks like it's just a large tree. Oh, actually, it came down in someone's driveway as well on another car. There's a small sedan that's in the driveway that we're looking at as well right now. So we're just coming up on this damage. Like I said, we can't go any further because we can't get across the road.
So we're being kept back here by police. Hold on, neighbor.
Oh my God.
Ma'am, what happened here? What?
We were at Hot and Kettle, and the wind was so bad. I was waiting for something to come slamming through my windshield. We just pulled in, and it hit. Oh my God!
What about this tree here that's down across the road? Did you hear that as well?
No. My roommate said he saw it fall down.
He saw it fall down.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh my God! It's a mess everywhere. This tree's down. It's terrible.
Okay.
Terrible. Oh my God! Right on that car too.
Yeah, it's on 2 cars right here.
Oh my God.
Sorry, we're live on the air right now on Channel 7. So can you just tell me right now what else you were hearing in this area?
The wind and the rain, it was so bad. Everything blowing down. We were in Hot and Kettle parking lot in South Yarmouth, and I was so scared. We both were there. It was terrible, and there's trees down everywhere. Oh, my God, I've never seen anything like that in my life.
Can you just kind of describe where we are in Yarmouth right now for people that don't know?
We are on West Yarmouth Road in the middle of Buck Island and 28, the road that goes across.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's West Yarmouth, really. But they said it touched down in Yarmouth. I mean,
Right in
West Yarmouth.
Right
South Yarmouth.
Yeah.
And so, ma'am, were you here when this tree
No,
came
I
down?
was with Maureen, but I'm here visiting from Florida where we're supposed to have tornadoes. Not down here in Cape Cod, Mass. I lived here 28 years and never saw a storm like this. We had just pulled in the parking lot to get some lunch, and all the power went out. The trees went blowing everywhere.
The wind was terrible. Oh, my God, I couldn't believe it. I've never seen nothing like that in my life. Scary.
Could you hear it, like, coming through this area? Like, how when it picked up, did you hear it?
Yeah.
Where we were, we heard it.
Running from their cars and going into the stores. Yeah. Oh, my God. I've lived here all my life. I've never seen anything like that.
Okay.
Oh,
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you. So that was a first-hand account of that weather moving through this area. Those 2 women who live right here on this street where that tree came down. So,
John, we're getting your video in. It's actually on the left side of your screen. We're looking at your video now.
Okay.
And really, we're now finally getting to see what you were describing so eloquently, what we were seeing. And now we're actually getting to see it. And we see the big trees down. This looks like someone's umbrella or tarp or some sort of canopy that was just ripped out of the ground. And the people who are really in shock right now, looking at these big trees that are down across the road. And you just heard just the genuine reaction from the person there.
Yeah, the woman you talked to is saying she's never seen anything like this before.
Right, exactly. And I'm sure Joe's got the camera right now. And if you can go over, you can see where that pickup truck, that's the pickup truck that I was talking about. From where we're standing right now, it's tough to actually see the other car that I was talking about. It's being blocked right now by police. But there's another car that this tree came directly down on top of. So, yeah, there is significant damage right where we are here. Like I said, this tree is blocking the road. We're not going anywhere. Anyone trying to come down this road right here, they're not going anywhere. So definitely some significant damage here in Yarmouth that we're seeing.
Looks like, John, that the winds that caused all this damage, those have kind of subsided. Is it still raining there?
Yeah, exactly. So there's no rain right now, although we did see some streets that were definitely flooded. So while it isn't raining, that doesn't mean that there isn't some flooding still on some roads here. So we did see some of that, but the rain has subsided. The wind has subsided. But with that being said, there's some damage here. There are roads that are flooded. There are reasons still out there that people should be concerned. Just because it seems more quiet right now doesn't mean that people should just be running out and checking everything out. There could be wires down for people that are driving. There are areas that could still be flooded.
And again, we have a lot of people with power outages that they're dealing with as well, so you want to take the proper precautions there. Of course, if you have a generator, you probably know this, but we'll reinforce it. You don't put those indoors. You don't put it in a sealed garage. You keep that generator outside in a well-ventilated area. If we're looking for something good about this storm, John, it's that it was moving so quickly. It was going 35, 45 miles per hour as it moved through the area. So while it was intense and while it's causing a lot of damage, it did move offshore pretty quickly, so we didn't have to deal with it for hours and hours like it could have been if it were a slow-moving storm. But nonetheless, it just shows how quickly it can move in, do the damage, and then you almost snap your fingers and you look outside now, John, and there's no rain, there's no wind. It's over.
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. Right now I'm actually being walked to the back of someone's yard here where he said that a tin shed was actually picked up and moved into another neighbor's yard. I'm walking back there right now, so if you can just bear with me. But, you mentioned the power being out. That is the case. We were actually just passing through an intersection before we got here where all the lights were out. So people should watch that too. Okay, so here we are here. So we're in this backyard right now, and literally a tin shed that would normally be on the ground flew from one yard up into another yard, and right now it's actually sitting upside down in a number of trees. So this happened, a few minutes ago?
Yeah, this happened when the wind came through.
When the wind came through.
When the wind came through, and then when it died, we came out back here, and bang, I looked around, and I saw the tin shed. Comes from my neighbor's house. Must have picked it up and dropped it on his shed. And this came down, and all the trees.
The fence came down?
Fence came down, and all those trees back there.
And there's another tree back that way that snapped, yeah.
A few more in that neighborhood down there.
Just for a time frame, I mean, how quickly did this happen? Was it matter of minutes?
It lasted probably about, I want to say about 10 minutes.
10 minutes?
About 10 minutes.
Unbelievable.
It was just crazy. I shut the windows. I took my dog and went down the cellar. I said, that's crazy out there now.
I mean, for 10 minutes to see all this that happened.
10 minutes. And that's might be exaggerated a little bit.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going on the high side.
On the high side, yeah. So, guys, you can hear that this was just quick. It was powerful. And within that short period of time, we're talking fences down, trees down, a shed up on it's actually kind of sitting upside down right now. And then you have another tree that is snapped. Other than the one that we were talking about earlier, this is in another section of someone's backyard. A large tree snapped right over. So, again, this is sort of reiterating some of the damage that we're seeing. And this is just one section of one neighborhood in Yarmouth that we're talking about. This isn't, all over the place that we're seeing. Literally, we're stuck because we can't go any further with a tree down across the street here. And this is me just walking through people's backyards, walking up and down the street, checking things out. And in this small area, this is all the damage that we're seeing right now.
John, we just got word that 14,000 people now on the Cape are without power. So a lot of people impacted by this storm. I can imagine even more by some of the damage that we're seeing here in this footage. But we are getting firsthand look after this storm blew through. You mentioned how fast it just came and went.
Yeah.
It's already out to sea.
South Yarmouth, this is where we saw the radar reported tornado. Look at those winds whipping, and I think Chris may be looking at this as well, so he can kind of get an eye on this. National Weather Service is going to gather its team up, and then they'll go out, now that the storm has moved out, they're going to go and survey the damage. They're going to take a look at what type of damage they're seeing to determine whether or not there's that rotation that indicates it was an actual tornado that caused the damage. Maybe it was straight line winds, because you can see just as much damage sometimes with those straight line winds, especially when we're talking up to 90 miles an hour. And Chris, you're just taking a look at some of this video as well. And again, as I mentioned to John, the one good thing is it was moving. I mean, this storm was going 35 up to 45 miles an hour and kind of scooted off the coast pretty quickly.
Well, yeah, and unfortunately, the reason why it was moving along is because the winds that were steering it were strong. And when you have those stronger winds aloft, 5, 10,000 feet off the ground, it is also what helps produce these severe weather setups and can help produce that spin and that tornado that likely is going to be was confirmed by the radar. I mean, we saw a tornado debris signature on that radar there. The National Weather Service had mentioned that too. And essentially what the radar was seeing was not just rain in the sky, but it was also seeing debris, tree leaves. Very easy for tree leaves to get pulled up into the clouds there, and the radar beam to hit that and see the different sized leaves. There may be a piece of roof shingle or something else. And what happens is you get these radar returns coming back to the radar site saying, you know what, we're not seeing everything the same size, so it's not well correlated. And when you see these correlation coefficients drop, I know it's a fancy term, but you see a drop on the radar substantially, that's a pretty good indication that that's a tornado debris signature, meaning the debris has been lofted in the air. Looking at some of the trees, what will be the telltale sign too is not necessarily that there are a lot of them that they won't be uprooted and pushed in the same direction, but they'll likely be snapped. You get like halfway up a tree, you'll see them snapped, and you'll see them them kind of hanging over, and you'll see a bunch of them snap like that. And some of that damage, if you take an aerial view of it and step back, it's not all in the same direction. You know, there's kind of twists and turns to that damage, and I think that's likely what we're going to see here. Nonetheless, impressive wind gusts that we did catch, even an 85-mile-an-hour gust in Chatham. This is the rotation that we had tracked. I mean, we go back to about 11:15 this morning, or even earlier. We started tracking this cell that was south of Long Island and mentioned, hey, you know what, heads up across the Cape, you know, close to noontime. There's a rotating thunderstorm, and it's likely going to work on in thanks to the wind coming out of the south, and you're on the warm side of the warm front, and that means you're susceptible to these rotating storms with energy working right across like it did today with that wave of low pressure. Very close glance. I mean, you can see the track of it here. Notice where some of these light pinks and some of these peach color did occur and really have that little spin to it with some of the lighter green showing up once in a while next to it. Once it tightened up, that's when you get the potential tornado and what we call a gate-to-gate shear, which means, you know, wind in one direction, you know, minus the wind in the other direction. When I was looking at it, I mean, it was close to 80 or 90 miles an hour, and that's usually a pretty good indication that it can produce a tornado or a waterspout. And in this case, very close to the south coast of the Cape, especially in the Yarmouth area and West Dennis area, likely seeing tornado debris, as we mentioned before, and you can really see that on the left-hand side of the screen. Guys?
All right, Chris, thanks. We're going to go back out to John Coco, who's live in Yarmouth. We have him here with us. John, you were showing us, or describing to us, rather, and we were seeing also some of the damage behind you. You can also see neighbors starting to come out of their homes after this is all over, and you talked to some of them. What else did they have to say about this?
I mean, a lot of the neighbors just talking about how crazy all of this was. You know, this is what I was trying to describe to you guys earlier. This is that white pickup truck, and then the tree that snapped. You can see where it snapped across the road there, and it just came down right on top of this white pickup truck. Right now, police blocking the road, so no one's getting through this area because not only are police blocking the road, but you have this massive tree that snapped coming down and blocking the road. And then just on the other side over here, there's another car. It's tough to see from where we're positioned here, but there's another car right here, and it is crushed by this tree. Police on the other side as well. Maureen, we were talking earlier. You were just describing sort of what it was like around here. Can you just do that for me again?
It was terrifying. We were in the car in Hoth and Kettle parking lot, and the wind was coming down so bad, and the rain. And I was waiting for the building to fall on top of me. I'm so scared. I've never seen nothing like that in my life.
And you were saying that it happened quickly, though, too, right?
Yeah. All of a sudden, the rain just came down.
Sorry.
The rain just came down. The wind was terrible, like in about 10 minutes.
Within 10 minutes?
Yeah, it was terrible.
Worse than a hurricane. It was very scary.
It was very scary?
Yes.
And so you mentioned the wind, but also the rain was coming
down.
The
rain was unreal.
It was awful. Oh, my God.
It was like a blizzard, only rain. It was nasty.
Now, we were trying to get home, and we were going behind the town hall parking lot, and there were trees down everywhere, wires down everywhere.
And so you came home and saw this?
Yes, I just saw this when I made it home. John said he saw the tree fall, the guy with the leaf blower.
The guy with the leaf blower over there?
Yeah.
I mean, you were saying you both have lived here for a really long time.
Yeah,
I know
55 years.
I'm moving back to this.
I'm shaking.
I know, I can see that you're shaking right now.
Oh, so scary.
And so you haven't seen anything like this
Never,
before?
ever. No. Oh, it's terrible.
I lived here 28 years before I moved down to Cocoa Beach, and I never saw anything like this. Even Hurricane Bob wasn't this bad.
Okay.
And that was a bad hurricane.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
And so again, I think we talked about this a little bit when I was on the phone, but we're just in one small section in a small area of Yarmouth. There's damage like this all over the area here. This is not isolated, but we are looking at one large tree that came down across the street over here. It crushed two cars. We can't really move to where I was earlier before, but let me describe this for you. A neighbor here took me into his backyard, okay? And then in his backyard, there's a tin shed that's actually upside down here in this backyard. It's upside down. It was taken from one neighbor's yard, upended, and now it's actually sitting in a tree area here in this backyard. And then just beyond that backyard, there's another tree that's been snapped, and it's over. fences taken out. There's debris all over the place here. At this point, we actually have a neighbor out here with the leaf blower that's trying to just clear some of that debris out of the front of his yard. Neighbors have started coming out at this point to try to check some of this stuff out. But you heard that woman, Maureen, say this was terrifying. She's shaking right now from what she experienced. The wind, the rain, all of that put together, and just how quickly that it all came together. One neighbor is saying 10 minutes. Maureen said about 10 minutes. And they were saying that's on the high end. So in just a matter of minutes, this is what happened here. Guys?
John, and for a lot of people, unfortunately, on the Cape, this is almost like a double whammy. Over the past 2 days, we saw you live in Harwich this morning, where you were showing us a very similar scene. I don't know if the people in the Yarmouth area, if they dealt with any of the bad weather yesterday, but I mean, there was a tornado warning yesterday, another one today. It's been a really rough stretch, and you can imagine for the people who were hit yesterday, they're working on trying to clean up the mess, and then all of a sudden, another big system comes ripping through.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the folks that we were talking to in Harwich, they were just getting all of this under control. You know, they were using their chainsaws to chop up the trees. They were using the wood chippers to get rid of all of that stuff. That's what they were doing this morning when we were down there at 9, 8, 7 o'clock. They were just starting to get rid of all of the debris, and then here comes this all over again. So, yeah, this area definitely hit hard within, really a matter of hours. I mean, we're talking about, 6, 7, 8 hours of people having to deal with all of this. And then here it comes again. Like I said, we have a tree down here. There are trees down in neighbors' yards. Sir, we were talking earlier about some of the damage that you were seeing. Just describe to me the backyard again.
Well, there's a bunch of branches down. There's a tin shack that came from one neighbor's house, and it flew right over a 7-foot fence onto my other neighbor's shed. And it's all crumbled up. There's trees in the back that are down, 3, 4, maybe 5 trees, fences down in my backyard, and all in about, I told you before, less than 10 minutes, I'd say, but 10 minutes at the max, it was through and gone.
What did it get like here? I know it was quick, but like the skies turned dark, the winds pick up. What happened?
Everything was dark. The winds picked up. There were leaves flying, branches going everywhere. Everything was up in the air, just flying over the house.
Any sound? Did it make noises? Could you hear that wind howling? What was it like?
You heard the wind, but it really didn't sound like a tornado wind that I've heard before. It was windy, and the rain was pelting, and leaves, like I said, and branches were everywhere. We were just talking about how yesterday, more or less last night, people were hit down in the Harwich area with some of these strong winds and stuff like that. What was it like here last night? Anything? Quick downpours, and that was it.
Okay.
And a lot of thunder. Wind, minimal.
Okay.
Minimal wind right around here.
Sir, thank you so much. Good luck getting everything back together. All right, guys, that's the latest live here in Yarmouth. You can hear a lot of people having to deal with a lot of damage at this point. Back to you.
All right. Thank you, John, for that. We have a viewer on the phone with us now. Megan McGuire is on the phone. She's in West Yarmouth. She was at Cape Sands Inn at the time that this storm hit. Megan, tell us what you experienced where you were.
Hi there. My mom and I were just sitting in our room. We were going to go see a friend down in Chatham, and we saw the winds pick up. We saw the rain come down heavy from our window. We have a view of like a little river behind our hotel room. And so everything darkened, and we closed the curtains, and my mom and I actually went down between the two beds and put pillows over ourselves. And for a brief moment, we heard something that sounded like a freight train. It was like only 2 seconds. And I remember my mom was saying, "This is it." And I was like, "What?" And then it went away. Everything lightened up. The rain lightened. And we looked outside, and the far end of the motel, the roof was ripped off. And all of the guardrails on the decks were pushed back towards the building. It was pretty scary, actually.
I can imagine, Megan. Where are you from originally?
I'm from Westminster, and I recently moved to Fitchburg, so North Worcester County.
What you're doing is what a lot of people are doing this time of year. You're vacationing on the Cape. Yesterday, rough and tumble weather rolls through. Today, again, I mean, it has to be a little shocking for you and scary. I mean, it was a good word for you to describe it when you had to get down between the beds.
Yeah, no, it was, I honestly, I was trying to keep calm, but in all, I've been coming here for 24 years now with my family and friends, and I've seen nothing like this in all the 24 years that I've been here. So, yes, it definitely was shocking, to say the least.
That really scared you the most or shocked you the most? Was it the wind? Was it the rain? Was it just a combination of just this weather that ripped through that area?
Well, I'd say it was just the brief sound of, like, furniture moving and then looking out afterwards, honestly. And my mom and I realizing, like, wow, we just survived a tornado. Yeah.
Go through this? I mean, because it seems like this was a fast-moving storm, which, if we're looking for positives, it was that it was moving about 45 miles an hour. When you were at the brunt of this and going through the really bad part of this storm, how long did it last?
It only felt like, I think it was 10 minutes tops. That's what it felt like, at least.
Okay, Megan, again, we're glad you made it through this. Wish you didn't have to deal with it while you're on your vacation. But again, it's Cape Cod in the summertime. The conditions were right for it. We heard from Jeremy. We heard from Chris. They were telling us it was almost like a tropical type system that you would see in other parts of the country when the hot air and the humidity mix in with the atmosphere. And I'm getting way too scientific at this point, so I'm going to let you take over. Is it making sense?
We've been talking about a lot over the last couple of hours, and you are learning well, Mr. Anderson here. Unfortunately, yeah, when you get into these soupy tropical air masses, we are talking about the potential when anytime you have the energy and the wind shear, which is winds essentially changing direction with height and speed, you do have the chance of getting a rotating thunderstorm that produces a tornado. And the reason for that also helps to be that the clouds are lower to the ground. You have more moisture, more buoyant air near the surface. And that helps lift up pretty quickly there. And with the rotation of the atmosphere, you do get these spin ups. I want to go show you here what the radar did look like. This was going to be just east of Mashpee right around noon. This is when we really became concerned, and it was right around 12:02. The National Weather Service said, hey, you know what? We're going to confirm on the radar that there is a tornado that is on the ground very close to the West Dennis and South Yarmouth area. And the reason why the radar is able to do that now is that the radar can send out a signal to the thunderstorm that actually both in the vertical direction and the horizontal direction. And when it gets back some of that energy bouncing off, typically it's raindrops. Usually it'll say, all right, it's all raindrops, similar size. We're going to mark it red. You know, they're all correlating very well together. When you start to get debris lofted in the air, tree leaves, perhaps a piece of a tree branch or a piece of a roof shingle, that's when the radar senses, all right, not all of the objects that the beam and the energy is hitting is coming back to the radar saying it's the same size. That's when you get a huge drop off in the correlation because the objects aren't correlating same size-wise very good. So when you see that drop off in the correlation, it's a pretty good indication that there is a tornado debris signature that you're looking at, and a tornado did touch the ground. Not only that, in this area, we did have some reported gusts, 79 miles an hour and a 90-mile-per-hour wind gust. So, at that moment, whether it was a tornado or not, you're talking about powerful wind gusts. But most likely with this signature, it was a tornado. Then you also combine that with the velocity signatures, and we were showing you this all morning long, essentially late morning to about noontime with some of the velocity scans. Going to switch over and show you one of those of what happened here down through the Cape over the past couple of hours. I want to zoom in where you do see, and I'll slow this down, where you do see some of these bright reds and even peach colors matching up with some of the lighter greens. That's where you have the most intense rotation there. Now, the storms themselves are moving along very quickly here, so it's not going to be, equal opportunity with your green matching up with your red at exact speeds. The speed-wise looks a little lopsided, but when you're talking about winds at about 75 or 80 miles an hour pushing in one direction and maybe 20 miles an hour in another, that is the difference of about 80, 90, 100 miles an hour, and that indicates that these thunderstorms are rapidly tightening up in terms of the rotation. And that's why the tornado warning was so prolonged and very well warranted here, because you continued to see the potential, if not for damaging wind gusts, but that rapid ramp up and tightening of the rotation that could produce a tornado. So we were very concerned beginning right around 11:30 this morning, 11:15 this morning, from the northern side of the vineyard, the south side of Falmouth, back through the Elizabeth Islands, and then all the way through Mashpee and eventually into South Yarmouth in the West Dennis area, where it did ramp up enough that it produced that tornado that we saw with the correlation on the radar as well. Now you're seeing the aftermath of it with all of the debris, the downed trees, and you'll likely see a lot of these trees that are snapped in half and kind of hanging, tree limbs hanging over as you see a lot of the damage and the down power lines in these areas as well. Guys, Brian, back to you.
Good afternoon, Chris Lambert. Thank you so much. Ryan Schulteis here joining the coverage this afternoon. Great job, Chris, of explaining what's going on. We're taking a live look here right now in South Yarmouth, what the damage is going on right there. We understand we have our John Coco. He is there in Yarmouth talking about the damage. And John, walk us through what we're looking at here.
Yeah, Ryan, so right now, this is a tree that snapped and came down right across the road. And when it did snap, it landed on two vehicles. One sedan that you can see right underneath the tree here. This got the worst of the damage. You can also see where that tree snapped. And then if you follow along the tree, you can see that it landed on the hood of this white pickup truck here. So no one's going anywhere up or down this road in this section here. We spoke with a number of people that live along this street. They just described a terrifying situation where the skies got dark, the wind picked up, and the rain started coming down. And this is what they found when they came out of their homes. Massive trees like this coming down and causing damage. One other neighbor that we spoke with talked about a tin shack that was in one of his neighbor's yards. It was picked up, flipped upside down, and it ended up in another's neighbor's yard. And then when we went back there, we could see another tree that had snapped. So serious damage in this area here of Yarmouth. And I've been saying this today, just that this is just a small section of Yarmouth that we're talking about here. There's other damage in other areas of Yarmouth that clearly have happened, but we're just kind of stuck here in this area right now because of what you're looking at, this massive tree that's come down across the road. Yarmouth police blocking it in both directions, trying to keep people out of this area for safety reasons, because like you said, trees coming down, they're landing on vehicles. A number of neighbors had come out of their homes to check things out. People have gone back into their homes at this point. I think they initially came out just to sort of see what was going on in that quick burst of weather that we saw. And that's one thing that people kept talking about when we ran into them, just how quickly this all happened. We're talking a matter of minutes on the high end, maybe 10 minutes, but probably less than that from what some people are telling us. It was extremely, extremely quick and extremely powerful. Ryan?
And John, I was watching your interview before with some of the neighbors you were speaking with, and she was actually still shaking from what she saw. Walk us through their reaction to what was going on, and then when they came out, what they witnessed.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Ryan. A woman named Maureen that we spoke with, when we were doing our initial interview with her, which was just on the phone, she was shaking. And then another, 5 to 10 minutes later, we went back to her when we had our camera up and running, and she was still shaking. Talking about how she's never seen anything like this, and she's lived here all her life. So she was absolutely terrified. Yeah, she was shaking. She was trying to describe to me what she experienced, and you could tell she was almost at a loss for words. She was talking about how she, the rain came in, the wind came in, the skies got dark. But yeah, I mean, the word that keeps coming to my mind is just how terrified she was at what she experienced. And then another neighbor, sort of the same thing, just talking about how scary it was and how quickly all of this happened. He came in his house. He was staying inside of his house for safety reasons, obviously. But then when it passed, he came out just to see what had happened. And I think he was just in total shock as well. He couldn't believe it.
And we're looking at just a lot of damage all across the Cape. John Coco live here in Yarmouth. Thank you so much for your report. We are getting reports in from across the Cape. More than 14,000 people without power. Harwich also hard hit. Good video in from them. And of course, this is video from the Cape Sands Inn. This is in West Yarmouth. They lost part of their roof because of this Doppler confirmed tornado that moved through the area. Hard hit areas right there. More than 14,000 people without power. As we look at some of the damage there, we are getting more damage reports in by the minute here because more people are going out, and we're looking through some of the video. sent into us right here of just how this is a Mashpee here, how treacherous it was when this storm was going through. And if I could bring in Chris, I want to talk to Chris just a little bit about how rare this might be to have a tornado confirmed on the Cape, Chris.
Yeah, it's not often. We'll have to look back through the record books here to see. Every once in a while you can get these water spouts, brief tornadoes down across the Cape and the islands. You certainly don't see it, every year. And for these folks in a specific location, they're going to tell you that this is the worst that they've seen it. Folks that have lived there for 20, 30, 40 years, because you don't often get it, especially in the same spot. There have been a couple down across the Cape and down across the islands, dating back to 1950. You'll have to look up for the exact numbers on that. But what more importantly you look for in a situation what we had this morning, almost similar to what it was like. You remember the Revere tornado that we had just a few years ago? You're essentially just on the warm side of a warm front. You have a tropical air mass in place. It's high humidity. For most of us this morning, it was much cooler and breezy with the wind coming in out of the northeast. Not the case across the Cape. The wind was out of the south, so there was a warm front that was just north of Cape Cod. When you're tucked just on the south side of that warm front and you have a wave of low pressure ride by and you have high humidity in place, it's notorious for producing rotating storms, and that was the concern this morning.
Chris, we're taking live pictures here from our storm tracker. This is in West Yarmouth as our storm tracker is driving down the street. You can see the damage that they're encountering as they go by there. Also, MEMA has partially activated